The wind was cold and sharp as Evan walked through the silent snow market. The old trading stalls were broken and covered in white ice, and every wooden roof creaked under the heavy snow. Evan pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders, but the cold still bit his skin. He had traveled far and long, and this strange alien valley felt emptier than any place he had seen before. He stepped forward slowly, his boots sinking into the snow with every step. The world around him was quiet, almost too quiet. There were no voices, no footsteps, no life, only snow falling from a pale sky. It looked like a place forgotten by time. Lost under the weight of winter, Evan was used to loneliness. He had walked alone for years. He had no home now, no plan, only the road in front of him. But something about this market felt wrong, like the silence was hiding something dangerous. He stopped near a broken stall and looked around. His breath made small clouds in the cold air. Then he heard it, a cry, soft and weak, almost too small for the wind to carry. Evan froze, his heart beat faster. He listened again. The sound came from behind an old crate near the center of the market. A second cry followed, this one even smaller. Like a newborn voice struggling to breathe, Evan moved quickly, pushing through the snow, behind the crate. He saw something that made him stop in shock. A small alien girl stood there. Shaking from head to toe, her skin was bright purple. Her hair long and white, and her clothes were thin and torn. In her arms she held a tiny baby wrapped in a piece of cloth. The baby's skin was the same purple. And the child whimpered softly, too cold to cry loud. The little girl looked at Evan with wide, scared eyes. She hugged the baby close to her chest and whispered in a trembling voice, "Human." "Can you buy us?" Evan blinked. He did not understand at first. "Buy you?" he asked gently. He kneeled in the snow so he would not scare her. "Why would I buy you?" The girl looked down at the baby and said, "No one wants us, my mother." They tied her there. She pointed behind Evan with a shaking finger. Evan turned slowly, and what he saw froze the breath in his chest. A tall alien woman, skin the same deep purple, hair white like snow, was tied to a wooden post in the center of the market. Thick rope held her arms and legs. Her clothes were torn, and her feet were bare on the freezing wood. Her head hung low, but when Evan looked closer, he saw that her eyes were open. Watching him, she was alive, but only barely. Evan stood up and took a few steps toward her. Snow blew across the ground, and the wind moaned around the post. The woman's lips moved slightly, as if she wanted to speak, but did not have the strength. The little girl ran after Evan, still holding the baby tightly. "They said we are cursed," the girl whispered. "They said we bring bad luck. They left us here to die." Evan felt something heavy in his chest. This was wrong. This was cruel. He reached the post and looked at the ropes. They were tied tight and frozen solid. He touched the woman's arm gently. Her skin was ice cold, but she blinked, slow and weak. She was trying to stay alive for the children. "Don't move," Evan said. "I will help you." But before he could reach for his knife, he felt something strange. A presence, a shadow. He turned his head slowly. Scanning the white fog around the market, something was watching them. Something waiting. The little girl felt it too. She pressed closer to Evan and whispered, "They come back sometimes, the hunters. They said they will return for us." Evan swallowed hard. The snow around them suddenly felt heavier, darker. The wind carried a deep sound he didn't like, a low growl, far away, but moving closer. He put himself between the alien children and the open snow. His instincts screamed danger. He looked at the woman tied to the post, then at the two small lives shivering beside him. He could leave them, walk away, pretend he never saw any of this. No one would blame him. No one would even know. But Evan knew one thing. He had never walked away from someone who needed help. Not before, not today. The little girl looked up at him with hope and fear mixed together. Human, will you save us? Evan took a breath, his voice firm. Yes, I will. The wind grew stronger. The distant growl echoed again, louder than before. Something was coming through the snowstorm, and Evan knew this was only the beginning. Snow blew harder as Evan stood protectively in front of the small alien girl and the baby. The feeling of danger was strong now, like the whole frozen market was holding its breath. The little girl kept her eyes on the white fog, and the baby pressed its tiny face into her shoulder, trying to stay warm. Evan turned toward the tall alien woman tied to the wooden post. Her head lifted slowly when she heard his footsteps on the snow. Her eyes were tired but sharp, watching him with a strange mix of fear and hope. Her arms were bound with rope, so tight that the skin under them looked bruised. Her ankles were tied to the base of the post, forcing her to stand, even though she was too weak to hold herself. Evan touched the rope. It was frozen stiff, hard like stone. I will get you out, he said softly. Just hold on. The woman tried to speak, but only a breath came out. The little girl hurried to her side. Mama. He is a good human, she whispered. He will help us. The woman blinked slowly, and this time she managed to whisper one word, children. Evan nodded. I will protect them, he said. I promise. But before he could pull out his knife again, the snow behind him shifted, soft at first, then heavier. Like footsteps sinking deep into the ice, Evan turned quickly, his hand gripping the handle of his knife. Out of the fog came 3 figures, tall and broad. Their skin was a darker shade of purple than the woman and the children, and their eyes glowed faintly in the cold air. They wore thick fur armor and carried metal-tipped staffs. They stopped a short distance away, staring at Evan with cold, sharp expressions. One of them stepped forward. Human, he said, his voice deep and rough. Move away from them. Evan felt the little girl grab his coat. Shaking, he placed a hand on her shoulder, keeping her behind him. I'm not leaving, Evan replied, his voice steady. They're freezing. They need help. The hunter snorted. They are cursed, he said. The woman disobeyed the clan. The child is unwanted, and the baby. That one must not live. Evan's jaw tightened. The baby is just a baby, he said. She hasn't done anything. The hunter raised his staff, pointing it toward Evan. This is not your business. Human, he growled. Walk away. Evan took a step forward, blocking their path to the children. I can't, he said quietly. I won't. The hunters exchanged looks, annoyed and amused. To them, Evan was small, unarmored, alone. They were tall, strong, used to cold and battle. They didn't see him as a threat. Another hunter laughed. Humans are soft, he said. Why risk your life for these cursed ones? Evan didn't answer. He focused on their movements, their weapons, the deep snow around them. He had fought bigger problems before. He had survived things others didn't. The lead hunter stepped closer, his shadow long on the snow. Move, he ordered again. Or we will move you. Evan lifted his chin. Try, he said. The hunters tensed, their muscles flexing. Snow swirled around them as the wind grew stronger. The little girl pressed close to Evan's side, her small voice shaking. Human. Please don't get hurt, Evan whispered back. Stay behind me. One of the hunters suddenly lunged forward. Swinging his staff, Evan ducked and rolled in the snow, grabbing a broken piece of wood from the market stall nearby. The hunter swung again, but Evan blocked it with the wood, the force pushing him back a step. The second hunter moved to the side, trying to circle around him. Evan kicked snow into his eyes and hit him with the plank. The hunter stumbled surprised. Humans weren't supposed to fight like this. But Evan wasn't just any human. The baby started crying harder, the sound thin and cold. The alien woman tied to the post tried to move, tried to protect her children, but the ropes held her in place. She whispered something weakly, but the wind swallowed her voice. The hunters grew angry. They were not used to resistance, especially not from a lone traveler. The lead hunter stepped forward again, this time swinging his staff down with enough force to break bone. Evan blocked it with the wooden plank, but the plank cracked in half. Evan stumbled back, snow bursting around his feet. The hunters laughed. "See," one of them said. Weak, but Evan didn't fall. He tightened his grip on the broken plank and stared at the three of them, cold determination in his eyes. Behind him, the little girl whispered, "Please, save Mama." Those words pushed something inside him, something deep and old, the part of him that refused to walk away from danger, the part that hated seeing innocent people hurt. Evan straightened, breathing hard. "I'm not done," he said. The hunter spread out, ready to end it. But just then, the wind shifted, bringing a deep, distant horn sound from far across the snowy valley. The hunters froze, their eyes widened. The lead hunter muttered, "No." "They are early," Evan frowned. "Who is coming?" The hunter glared at him. "More hunters," he said. A full party. Evan felt the danger rising like a storm. He looked at the children, at the tied woman, at the growing fear in their eyes. He knew he had no more time. He had to free them now. He had to fight. He had to run. But he could not leave them, not after what he had seen. The horn sounded again, louder, closer, and the snow market seemed to tremble. Evan stepped toward the woman, knife ready, heart racing. Snow fell heavier now, thick and fast, as Evan rushed to the alien woman tied to the post. His hands were shaking from cold and fear, but he kept his knife tight in his grip. He cut at the frozen rope again and again, but the thick ice around the knots made every slice slow. Painful and useless, the little girl stood behind him, holding the baby close, her small arms shaking from cold and fear. "Human." "Hurry," she whispered, her voice soft and scared. "They are coming," Evan nodded. "I know," he said. "I'm trying." The alien woman's breathing grew weaker. She struggled to stay awake, to stay standing. Her eyes kept drifting shut. But every time the baby cried, she forced herself awake again. Evan cut harder, shards of ice flying. The rope finally began to loosen. Just a little, just enough to give him hope. But then the first hunter stepped forward through the snow fog. His staff raised high, his eyes glowed with anger. He pointed the sharp metal tip toward Evan. "This is your last chance, human," he growled. "Walk away." Evan stood in front of the woman, protecting her with his own body. "I'm not walking anywhere," he said quietly. Two other hunters moved to the sides, trapping them between the stalls and the post. Snow crunched under their heavy boots. Their breath made warm clouds in the cold air. The little girl tightened her arms around the baby, hiding them behind a broken crate. She whispered, "Please don't hurt him. Please." The lead hunter stepped closer. "Humans do not belong here," he said. "This is clan business." Evan's voice stayed calm, but his heart was beating fast. "Then your clan is wrong," he said. "You don't hurt children. You don't leave mothers tied in the cold." The hunter's eyes narrowed. "You fight for them?" he asked, surprised. "Why?" Evan didn't look away. "Because no one fought for me," he said simply. The hunter let out a short, cruel laugh. "Then you will die like them," he said. And he swung his staff with full force. Evan jumped back, rolling in the snow. The staff hit the wooden post with a loud crack, splintering the wood. The alien woman gasped in pain as the vibrations shook her whole body. The second hunter ran forward, swinging at Evan's legs. Evan dodged. Grabbing a broken plank from the ground, he blocked the next strike, the impact sending pain up his arm. But he didn't fall. He swung the plank hard. Hitting the hunter in the side of the head, the hunter staggered, surprised that a human could hit so hard. But Evan didn't stop. He swung again, then again, pushing the hunter back, pressing forward even though his hands were numb and his breath felt like ice. The third hunter tried to grab the little girl. Reaching for her over the crate, she screamed, holding the baby tight. Evan turned instantly, his heart exploding with panic. "Stay away from them," he shouted. The hunter swung his staff downward, but Evan blocked it with his arm, pain shooting through him. He grabbed the hunter's wrist and pulled him down into the snow, punching him with the broken plank until the man rolled away. Stunned, snow sprayed everywhere. The wind howled like a wild animal. Evan's breath was fast and sharp, but he did not back away. He stood in front of the children, blocking the hunters with his entire body. The hunters regrouped, angry and embarrassed. "Enough," the leader roared. "This ends now." They rushed at Evan together, 3 against 1. Their staffs swung like dark shadows in the storm. Evan ducked one strike and kicked the snow upward into another hunter's face. The man stumbled blindly. Evan hit him with the plank, breaking it in half. The second hunter grabbed Evan from behind. Pinning his arms, Evan twisted hard. Slamming his head backward, the hunter yelped, releasing him. Evan pushed him down and kicked away his staff. But the lead hunter was fast. He swung his weapon down hard, and Evan barely blocked with the half-broken plank. The plank shattered into pieces. Evan gasped, stumbling back. His hands were empty now. Cold and shaking, the lead hunter grinned. "Weak," he said. "Just a human." But Evan did not fall. He stepped forward again. Even without a weapon, even without strength, he placed himself between the hunters and the children. The little girl watched with wide eyes, whispering, "Please don't die, human. Please." The lead hunter raised his staff for the final blow. But suddenly the air changed. The wind slowed. The baby stopped crying, and instead looked toward the white fog with wide, glowing eyes. The little girl whispered, "She sees something." A deep horn echoed across the frozen valley. Louder, heavier than before, the hunters froze. Fear flashed across their faces. The leader whispered, "No." "Not now." Evan frowned. "Who is coming?" The hunter glared at him. "A full hunting party," he said. "Dozens." The danger multiplied instantly. Evan felt the cold press deeper into his bones. He looked at the tied woman, then at the children, then at the hunters closing in again. He had only one choice left. "Run," Evan whispered to the girl. "Now." He grabbed the knife again and slashed the last rope around the woman's wrists. The rope snapped, and she collapsed forward into his arms. Weak and freezing, Evan lifted her up, his legs shaking under her weight. "Come on," he told her. "Stay with me behind them." The horn sounded again, closer, deeper. The snow trembled under the footsteps of something big. Evan held the woman tight, reached out his free hand toward the little girl, and said the words that would change everything. "Stay with me, both of you. I won't leave you." And together, they ran into the storm as the hunters shouted behind them. The full hunting party already closing in. Snow hit Evan's face like sharp needles as he carried the weak alien woman in his arms. The little girl ran beside him, holding the baby close to her chest. Their tiny footprints disappeared behind them as the wind erased the trail seconds after it formed. Behind them came the horn again, deeper, stronger. Like a giant calling across the valley, the sound shook the frozen air. Evan didn't look back. He knew what he would see. A full hunting party marching through the storm. The woman in his arms opened her eyes for a moment and whispered, "They won't stop. They want the baby." Evan tightened his grip on her. "Then they will have to get through me," he said. Breathless but steady, the little girl struggled to keep up, her thin legs shaking from cold. Evan reached out his free hand. "Hold my coat," he said. "Don't fall behind." She grabbed the fabric tightly, her fingers turning pale from the cold. The baby let out a small, weak cry, the sound almost lost in the storm. The plain in front of them was endless, a wide-open field of white ice and broken stone. No trees, no shelter, nothing to hide behind. It felt like running on a giant sheet of frozen sky. Evan scanned the landscape. His breath was burning in his chest. He carried the woman with one hand under her legs and the other around her shoulders. Every step heavy but determined, the woman lifted her head a little, her breath fogging the air. "There," she whispered, pointing toward a dark shape far away. "An old barn." "Abandoned," Evan nodded. It wasn't much, but it was something, a place to hide, a place to breathe, behind them. The hunters' voices echoed through the storm. Their footsteps were heavy, steady. Getting closer with every second, the lead hunter shouted orders. His voice cutting through the wind like a blade. Evan pushed harder. His legs burned. But he didn't slow down. The little girl kept pace with him, even though her breaths were short and fast. She whispered to the baby, trying to keep her calm. "It's okay, little one. Don't cry. Mama is here. The human is here." The woman in Evan's arms blinked weakly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved them." Evan shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "But I will." A sudden warning cry came from the baby, her voice sharp and strange, like she could sense danger before it arrived. The little girl gasped. She knows. She feels when danger comes. Evan didn't understand how, but he trusted it. He looked back and saw dark shapes through the fog, hunters spreading out in a wide formation to cut them off. "Faster," Evan said, his voice tense. "We have to reach that barn." The barn grew clearer through the fog, old and crooked, its wooden walls broken, its roof sagging but still standing. Snow covered half the building, and a dark hole in the side looked big enough for them to crawl through. Evan reached the barn first, placing the woman gently on the ground. She winced but nodded. "Go inside," she whispered. "Hide the children." Evan lifted the little girl into the opening, then handed her the baby carefully. "Stay quiet," he said. "Hold her tight." The woman crawled inside slowly, her body shaking. Evan followed last, pulling himself through the broken boards. Inside, the air was cold, but still, old hay covered the floor, and thick shadows filled the corners. The roof creaked under the weight of snow, but the walls blocked the wind. They hid behind a pile of broken crates, breathing softly. Evan held his knife in his hand, ready, even though he knew it wouldn't be enough against dozens. The woman whispered, "If they find us, take the children and run." Evan shook his head. "Not leaving you," he said. "Not after everything." The little girl held the baby tight, the infant staring toward the barn door with glowing, alert eyes. Evan watched her closely. The way her small fingers curled, the way her breath slowed. "Something is wrong," the girl whispered. She can feel them. Outside, the crunch of footsteps grew closer, slow and heavy, like predators moving in a circle. Snow shifted under their boots, and muffled voices echoed around the barn. Evan held his breath. The woman closed her eyes tight. The little girl covered the baby's mouth gently, trying to keep her quiet. One set of footsteps stopped right outside the barn wall. Evan could hear the hunter breathing, slow and steady, like he was smelling the air for fear. Then a second pair of footsteps joined him. Then a third. The hunters whispered to each other. "Tracks end here," one said. "They're inside." The baby's eyes widened more. Glowing softly, Evan felt his heart drop. A heavy hand grabbed the barn door from outside. Wood creaked loudly as it began to lift. Snow spilled in from the crack. Cold air rushing inside. The door rose higher, and a shadow fell over the entrance. The hunters had found them. Evan tightened his grip on his knife, his breath silent, his body ready for the fight he knew he couldn't win. But he would fight anyway, for the woman, for the little girl, for the baby who could sense danger, for the family he never expected to protect. The barn door opened all the way, and the hunters stepped inside. Weapons raised, eyes glowing in the dark. The moment of truth had arrived. The barn door opened wide, and cold white light spilled across the dark floor. Snow blew inside, covering the old hay. 3 hunters stepped through the entrance, their tall shadows stretching across the walls. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Weapons raised, breath fogging the air like smoke. Evan pushed himself in front of the woman and the children. Knife tight in his hand, his heart was beating fast. But his legs stayed firm. He had nothing left to use, no plan. But he was not going to move, not 1 inch. The lead hunter stepped forward, his voice low and full of anger. "You should have walked away, human," he growled. "Now all of you will die." Evan kept his voice calm. "If you want them," he said, "you go through me." The little girl held the baby tighter, her small hands shaking. The baby stared at the hunters with wide, glowing eyes, her breath soft but steady. The alien woman weakly tried to get up, her hands reaching out, but her legs were too cold to lift her body. The lead hunter swung his staff in a wide arc. Evan ducked, grabbing a broken wooden beam off the ground. He blocked the next strike, the force pushing him back 2 steps, but he didn't fall. The second hunter rushed from the left. Evan twisted, slamming his shoulder into the hunter's chest. The man stumbled back, shocked that the human still had strength. The third hunter raised his weapon toward the children. The little girl gasped, shielding the baby with her body. The alien woman cried out weakly. No. Evan reacted instantly. He charged forward, grabbing the hunter's arm and knocking his weapon aside. The 2 fell into the hay, rolling. Evan punched him once, twice, then pushed the hunter away. Snow blew harder through the barn, the storm screaming outside. Evan got back on his feet, bruised and breathing hard. But his eyes were burning with fire. The lead hunter stepped over the fallen boards. "You can't protect them all," he snarled. "You are 1 human." Evan spat blood into the snow. "1 is enough," he said. The lead hunter roared and rushed forward, swinging his staff with all his strength. Evan blocked the hit with the broken beam, but the wood shattered instantly. The force threw Evan across the barn floor, his back slamming against the wall. He slid down, gasping, his vision blurring. The little girl cried out, "Human, please get up." The alien woman tried to crawl toward him, but her body was too weak. She reached out her hand, eyes filled with fear. The baby stared at Evan with glowing eyes, then turned her gaze toward the hunters. Her breathing changed, slow and deep, like the air around her was shifting. Snow outside suddenly went still. The wind stopped for just 1 second. The hunters paused, confused. Then the baby let out a tiny, sharp cry. The sound was soft but powerful, like it cut through the storm itself. The temperature dropped instantly. A wave of frozen wind blasted through the barn, blowing snow and ice inward like a storm inside the walls. The hunters were thrown back, stumbling, covering their faces, their armor frosted over in seconds, their breath turning into white smoke. The little girl held the baby close, whispering, "It's okay. It's okay." But even she looked shocked. Even pushed himself up slowly, his body aching everywhere. He looked at the baby, surprised and confused. What? "What is she?" he whispered. The alien woman whispered weakly. "A seer child," she said. "She feels danger, and the world listens to her." The hunters struggled to stand. Their bodies shaking from the sudden cold, the lead hunter shouted, "Stop her!" But his voice cracked with fear. Evan stood again, gripping a broken piece of wood like a weapon. "No," he said, stepping forward. "This ends now." He moved faster than the hunters expected. Even with his injuries, he slammed into the lead hunter. Knocking him back into the support beam, the hunter dropped his weapon, coughing from the cold attack the baby had unleashed. The second hunter tried to attack from behind, but Evan swung the wooden board, striking his ribs hard. The man fell to his knees, gasping. The third hunter reached for the alien woman, but Evan caught his arm and pulled him away. Punching him across the jaw, the hunter fell face first into the snow. Unconscious, the storm inside the barn calmed. The baby stopped crying. The woman breathed weakly. Tears in her tired eyes, Evan stood over the fallen hunters. Chest rising and falling, snow melting on his skin, he had won. Not because he was strong, but because he refused to step aside. He walked back to the woman and gently lifted her in his arms. The little girl took his coat again. Holding the baby clothes, the infant finally quiet. Evan looked at them, his voice soft. "It's over," he said. "You're safe now." The woman touched his face with a trembling hand. "Why did you save us?" she whispered. "We are nothing to your people." Evan shook his head. "You're not nothing," he said. "No one is nothing." The little girl looked up at him, her eyes full of hope and fear. "Human. Can we stay with you?" Evan took a long breath as snow drifted gently around them. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "From now on, we stay together." They stepped out of the barn into the quiet white world, leaving the fallen hunters behind, a lonely human walking through the snow with a new family at his side. A mother, a little girl, and a seer baby who would change all their lives forever. And together, they walked toward whatever future waited for them.